Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Orions. Now, most of us in the spiritual community have heard the story of the Orion system. The guides say that it is the darkest system to ever have existed in our galaxy, so that is a pretty big deal. But what you may not be quite as familiar with is how closely the Orion story is tied into the drama that is playing out on Earth right now. So in today's video, we're going to take a quick look at the history of the Orion system, who the Orions are, but most of all, why they are so closely connected with some of the chaos and drama that is playing out on Earth. So that is what we are going to be taking a look at in today's video. The Orion system is, according to the guides, as we mentioned, the darkest system that has ever existed in our galaxy. And this is a system that was run, the guides tell us, by negatively oriented grays and the reptilians, who, as we know, are some of the members of our galactic family that are at the most extreme end of malevolence. So we are talking about a system that was extremely, extremely negative. I have heard some people say that the Orion system makes what is playing out here on Earth look like kindergarten. So this is a system that for eons, this was not a quick battle. This was not a system that had a little dip into the dark side. This went on, the guides say, forever. This was a very long-standing system of darkness and oppression. And again, it was known to be run by an empire, it's often called, of the reptilians and the negatively oriented gray beings. And as you're familiar with, when we talk about the Orion system, we're talking about the Orion constellation. So as you can tell, just when you look at that constellation, it is a massive system. So this was a reptilian gray empire, according to our galactic history. And it became a system for a very, very long time. The guides have said hundreds of thousands of years if we were thinking in linear time. So this is not a blip on the radar screen. This was not a little period of bad rulers. We are talking a massive, very long-lasting system of oppression. So in this system, the guides have said there was every form of control imaginable. So this was a system where everything was oppressed, everything was controlled, even thoughts were controlled. So this system was kind of the epitome of darkness in our galaxy. And this went on for a very, very long time. Now, one thing that is important to know about the Orion system is that it did eventually ascend. So the Orion system is no longer the dark empire that it once was, but we still have a very complicated relationship with the Orion history here on Earth. So we're going to get to that in a minute and talk about why this Orion history is actually relevant to what we are going through right now here on Earth. So the Orions did eventually move into the light after a very long time of oppression and control. And the guides like to say that the way they managed to do this, because this was a system where there was the reptilian empire and a very active band of resistance. And the resistance and the empire fought back and forth forever, essentially just keeping a stalemate. But there was a very active resistance to this control and domination empire. So how did they break out of this? Because that sounds a lot, to some extent, like what we are going through here on Earth, where humanity is trying to break out of the enslavement and control that until recently, we didn't even realize we were experiencing. So according to the guides, what tipped the scale in Orion and helped the system actually ascend was when the resistance learned that they could only be controlled if they were in a low frequency. So through doing their inner work, getting out of the mind, they discovered they couldn't be touched by the control mechanisms. The control mechanisms that were so advanced, so pervasive, in the Orion system only worked on people if they were low in vibration. So once the Orion resistance discovered this, they cracked the code to their liberation and they started doing their inner work, getting into the heart, and that enabled the system to ascend. And the guides have said it only took about 0.02% of the population to end the entire empire, to ascend the entire system. So that is really important for us here on Earth as light workers and starseeds, because we can feel like we are fighting a losing battle. Like no one else is even paying attention. We are doing all this hard work. It only took a sliver of the population to realize that the key to freedom is within. You can only be controlled if you are in the mind. So eventually, the Orion system did make it out of its prolonged period of enslavement and has moved now, the guides say, into the light. But it was a very big scar on the galaxy, what happened in the Orion system. So let's talk for a minute about why this is relevant to us here on Earth. Because when I first heard the story, I was like, oh God, that's really sad that that happened. But I didn't really appreciate what relationship it had here to us on Earth. It seemed like reading history when you're in high school, that you appreciate it, you feel sorry for what happened and that people suffered, but it doesn't always feel connected to you. And so that is one of the things that the guides wanted us to understand, is how closely we are paying some of the karmic debt of what happened in the Orion system. So according to the guides, what ties this Orion saga to us here on Earth is that as the tide was turning and it became apparent that the Orion system was going to ascend and move into the light, a lot of the most negatively oriented beings wanted no part of that. So the most negative beings, the most malevolent of the Orion characters, actually hatched a plan to leave the Orion system and flee to the galaxy. And guess where many of them came? Yep, you guessed it. They came here to Earth. So according to the guides, many of the most negatively oriented beings and behavior that we are seeing here on Earth come to us courtesy of the Orion system. So the guides have said that that is one of the things that ties Earth to the Orion history. Why some of the guides described it as what we are going through is paying back some of the karma that was created in the Orion system. So the Orion system is not just this very sad story that we hear about in galactic history. It is very much what we are playing out on Earth right now. So that is some of the karma we are seeing with the extreme negatively oriented beings that were in control of our planet for a very long time. They were here having fled the Orion system because they didn't want any part of moving into the light. And that's one thing that we have heard about the ancient reptilians, who are said to be one of the most advanced races in our galaxy, said to be high sixth density, is that they are holding themselves back from ascending because they don't want to move into source. They don't want to move into love and light. So they hold themselves artificially in negativity. So this is something that is an interesting part of our galactic history that we are paying the price for here on Earth. So let's talk for a minute about what life was actually like in the Orion system. So this is a star system that, more than many of the others that we have talked about, was a very diverse system. So this is not a system that was dominated by humanoids like some of the other star systems that we have talked about. But the Orion system is said to be one of the most diverse that we are aware of. So this is a system that has every conceivable species, race, type of being. They are all said to exist in the Orion system. So you have humanoid beings, you have reptilian beings, you have gray beings, and you have everything in between. So some people have compared it to the cantina scene in Star Wars to just give you a little sense of what daily life was like in the Orion system. Now, something else to know about the Orion system in comparison with what we have here on Earth is that it was a system of very limited resources. So the Orions were known to be very resourceful, to be able to make do with whatever was on hand. They were known to be very multi-talented. So the Orions could MacGyver anything. They could make do with whatever was laying around. So the Orions are known for being very adaptable, very resourceful, able to make do with anything that is around, make things work. That was kind of the mentality of the Orions. So these are people who are very practical. They don't have a lot of time or interest in anything that we would consider to be fluffy or frivolous. And they're known to have very strong personalities. So Orion energy can be very strong-willed, very opinionated, very willing and happy to tell other people what they should be doing, and as having not a ton of patience. So Orion beings are not necessarily likely to be interested in anything they consider to be frivolous. Anything that they think is not of value, they may have zero interest in and give no attention to. So you can think of them as being very practical, very focused, and definitely not ones who are going to be wasting their time on anything that doesn't have a purpose. So the Orions are known to be very goal-oriented, very on task, very driven, and very strong in personality. So we see this a lot in Orion starseeds as well, that very strong confidence, that sense of direction, sense of purpose, and really an intolerance for anything that they think is a waste of time. Now, something else that the Orions are known for is having very strong solar plexus energy. So these are beings that have a very strong sense of personal identity. They are beings who know exactly what they are about, what their goal is, what they are trying to accomplish, and they are not ones to be wandering around, wasting time. Again, that goes against that sense of work ethic that the Orions are so known for. So these are beings who are extremely on point, very task-oriented, very organized, and very practical. Now, although we have talked about the fact that the Orion system did ultimately ascend and move into unity consciousness, there are still a lot of negatively oriented beings associated with the Orion energy. So if this is an energy that you are connecting with, whether it is through guides, through working with your star family, through contact experiences, as we start to move deeper into the window for open contact, this is a group that you want to use all of your discernment with. So there are still negative Orion energies that are interested in derailing what is going on Earth. And so the guides have just said that this is a group that we want to be very cautious with. And that is just to say, turn your discernment up, make sure you know exactly what beings you are working with, because the Orions were masters of manipulation and deception. And so the guides have just said we want to have our wits about us as we interact with Orion beings. So that is just something to be aware of as we move more and more into the open contact window. So I hope this has helped you understand the Orion history a little better, understand what the Orions went through, and most importantly, why it's so important with what we are going through on Earth right now, because we weren't always so aware of what that connection was. And it's a pretty close one. We have a lot of Orion energy on the planet right now, and much of it is helping with the ascension process, but not all of it. So as always, y'all use your discernment. That is why you have all these wonderful tools we have been talking about in these videos, so that you know who you are working with, because you are the one in the physical body So you are always in control of who has access to you. So we want to stand in our sovereignty as we start to move back into our galactic family. Because like all families, you've got the good ones and you've got the ones that are not so helpful. So just always use your discernment with any star being you're connecting with. That is just always a good operating procedure. So I hope this has helped you understand the Orions a little better. I'll see you soon. Bye.